Formula 1 for the 2024 season finally arrives at what I like to call the Temple of Speed, the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, the highlight of the Formula 1 calendar not only for drivers but for spectators, as we can finally see all the Formula 1 cars pushed to the edge around this circuit. All of these upgrades will be based around hoping to improve the high-speed performance of all their vehicles. And let's start off with the Mercedes F1 team, as it's their home race. Now, a lot of attention has been on Mercedes throughout the week, with people wondering what were they going to bring for their home event. Well, unfortunately, it's only circuit-specific performance upgrades, so nothing actually that is going to improve the overall downforce and load produced by the W15 across the entire rest of the calendar. And as such, what they've done is they've trimmed the front and rear rings in order to help lower the drag and to help produce a perfect balance between the front and rear of the W15. The front wing flaps have been trimmed in order to decrease the load produced by them, and this has been done to improve the car balance if they did choose to go to a lower downforce rear ring for the event. Now, to counterbalance that, of course, the rear ring itself has had to also undergo a reduction in the local flap curvature, and we're talking about the lower element, not the upper element, in which the DRS mechanism is used to open the rear wing flap. This has been used to reduce the local load flap and offloads the main plane, and this of course gives less drag and downforce on the upper wing. So for Mercedes, it's all about making sure they have the right balance between front and rear downforce, because they feel they need a little bit less drag because of the straights that is on the Silverstone circuit, and what they had previously wasn't within the specific range in which they wished to go racing at this track. So that's what Mercedes have bought for this event. But before moving on to the next team, there is a little bit of an interesting story, which is that Mercedes will have upgrades hopefully for Hungary. That's when they will bring actual performance upgrades to the car. I think this was actually spoken by one of the engineers or one of the heads of Mercedes during their kind of debrief after the race in Austria. So of course, be on the lookout for that. Another team which is their home race is of course Aston Martin, and for Silverstone they brought a brand new front wing for the AMR 24. The aim is to help improve performance of the front wing and the downstream interactions, because as we all know, the Aston Martin outfit have got chronic mid-corner understeer problems, which they finally, according to them and their information, have understood, but it's going to take quite a lot of time to rectify this issue. Now, whether this is a potential beginnings to that, only time will tell. But what we can say after FP1 is they looked a lot more competitive than they did last weekend at Austria. Now, this might be because of the sorts of corners around the circuit, but then again, who really knows, as it's just FP1 and the fruit of their labour will only come during qualifying and the race and where they finish in that. Up next, we have Red Bull and the RB20, and they have bought a brand new floor, but it's only subtle changes which have been undertaken. And when I say subtle, I really mean subtle. It's extremely difficult to see these changes if you don't know where to look and to see the kind of geometries at play here. So let's start off with the floor body of the new floor on the RB20. The floor body has undergone a reprofiling of the surface just above and behind the lower sys tube, and it's kind of the bulge which you can see on screen now, which kind of has its own housing within the floor, and this is where the change has been undertaken. It seems to me, from what I can see, it's a little bit more kind of rectangular or squared off than the previous floor in which they've been racing up until the Austrian Grand Prix last week. Now, the next part of the change on the new floor is even more difficult to see, and I really cannot see any kind of changes to the naked eye. And so I suspect that it's maybe a degree or 4 of like a change in the angles of the floor edge. See if you can see any changes there, because I can't. On the left we have the Austria floor, and on the right we have the Silverstone floor, and the floor edge is on display and I cannot see any changes. And then last but certainly not least is the Haas team with their VF24. Now this is the most substantial upgrade that's been brought to the British Grand Prix this season, and it's quite a visual change, as they have now gone the route of Red Bull and have introduced the overbite on their side pod. But the team doesn't just stop there with creating the overbite. They've gone even further and completely reshaped the side pod inlet profile to accommodate this change. And as you can see from the previous and new versions on the screen right now, it's a dramatic difference. And this of course is going to have a lot of impact on where the airflow is going, and of course potentially they've had to make kind of changes to the radiators as well. Who knows, because we haven't seen what's underneath the skin. Also new on the Haas this weekend is of course a brand new floor to accompany the brand new side pod profile that they've introduced. And the aim of this whole package is of course to introduce a big improvement when it comes to high speed performance from the Haas car, and it's an area in which they've been lacking for the majority of the season. And with Silverstone being the temple of speed, it was imperative that they brought an upgrade which was utilized in order to rectify this issue. So those are all the upgrades for the teams this weekend. We're gonna have to obviously of course wait and see how this all unfolds, and to see if any changes occur in the pecking order. And I suspect for this weekend there's only going to be one, and that would potentially be Red Bull pulling further away from the field with their brand new floor. So yeah, that's the video guys, hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, turn on notifications, and I'll catch you all later on in another F1 video.